Apologies, everyone, for the late start here, but we will now begin the meeting. So, good afternoon. Welcome to your Innovation, Technology, and General Services Committee. I am now joining, because I'm the late one here, my colleagues, Councilman Mike Bonin and Councilmember Mitch O'Farrell. And we'll just jump right into it. Mr. Villanueva, are there any general public comment cards?
None, sir. We don't have any.
Great. So general public comment is now closed. Are there any comment cards on items 3 through 9?
None, sir.
Okay. Okay, well, I said there. So public comment on those items is closed. Unless there's an objection from my colleagues, I'm going to recommend that those items 3 through 9, be approved on consent.
No objections.
No objection. If you read those into the record, and we'll approve those on consent.
Yes, sir. Certainly. Item number 3 is a motion by Council Members Parks and O'Farrell relative to 4 city-owned properties within Council District 8 and its evaluation of surplus assets for economic development. Items number 4 through 8 are City Attorney reports relative to the request to destroy obsolete records from various departments from a period ranging from 1958 to 2013.
Okay. So without objection, those items are approved. And now we'll move to item number 1. We'll have a report from GSD General Manager on the top priorities. Mr. Royster, thank you for being here.
Good afternoon. The first item we'll brief you on is the vehicle management system. The whole report concerning that item has been approved by Personnel Committee, Budget and Finance, and the City Council in December of 2014. They transferred $1.7 million out of the UB to the department's accounts. There's a remaining $1.4 million that will be transferred in 2015-2016. And in the budget for 15-16, we're requesting additional $2.4 million needed to address the remaining portion of this project. GSD is working with the contractor. At this point, the city's standard provisions have been sent to the contractor for review, and the contractor is currently reviewing previous uploaded compliance documents to Bobbin to ensure that all documentation is current. SMS System Modification.
Before we go to SMS, I wanted to ask a question on this one, and
sure. Similarly
with my colleagues, if you have a question on a particular item, feel free to jump in. The full $3.1 million set aside in the UB, that's not all going to be used this year, is that right?
No, only 1.7 was transferred.
Okay, and what's the reason for the not using the full amount?
Because we're doing it in phases, 3 phases. I think the first phase will be GSD, the second phase will be the fire department, and the third phase will be police department.
Okay, but the difference, because last year when we were going for the money, we were told that we'd get because we pushed for that money, that the 3.1 would be in 1 year. Was it always intended that 3.1 was for multiple years?
It was just for multiple years. It's a phase-in program because we want to do GSD first and make sure we get all the bugs out before we go to the fire department and complete the fire department and then move on to the police department. Because the challenge you're having, especially on the phase 3, is because of the police department. They have very, very high standards when it comes to security as it relates to their computer system and for different confidential information they do not want to compromise.
Okay, and then the department is going to make a request for the budget to be put in the 15-16 unappropriated balance.
Yeah, an additional $2.4 million. Are you talking about the $1.4 million?
The non-spent of the $3.1 million. I assume you have to put that into the. You have to ask.
You probably would have to ask to have to reappropriate it and put it back in the UB for 15-16.
And that would be GSD that makes that request?
Yes, we will.
Okay, and then that'll go into the mayor's budget.
Correct.
And then it'll come forward with us. I know. Okay.
Okay. All right. Item number 2, SMS. We're moving forward with that particular project. The system modifications concept papers are now being reviewed by ITA, GSD, CGI, and the mayor's office. So that's project is still moving forward. As it relates to the automatic visitors parking system, We're currently working on the software customization.
So on the SMS, so that's on schedule?
Yes, on schedule.
Okay.
The automatic visitors parking software customization, we're working on that and should hopefully be complete with that soon. And we still plan to have this project roll out by the end of March 2015.
And are all departments going to use it when it rolls out, or is
Yes.
it phased? So it's department-wide, all
Department-wise, but what we might do, because of the massive amount of information we have, if it relates to parking, we might phase it in, for instance, start with one group first, maybe the elected officials, then other departments, whatever, because most of our visitor requests, whatever, it comes from elected officials. The Wilshire Boulevard Repavement Project, our materials testing unit is supporting this project. Currently, the concrete bus lanes on both north and south side of Wilshire Boulevard from Western to San Vicente is complete. Asphalt resurfacing of the middle lanes also have been complete on Wilshire Boulevard from Western Boulevard to San Vicente. The next item is reverse auctions. Since January 2015, we have completed auctions on some purchase for vehicles, emergency vehicle batteries, AV production equipment, LED modulars, and some additional sewer equipment was purchased through the reverse auction, and we're estimating that between those particular auctions that will save the city about $380,000 in savings. And I think so far since 2011 we've saved close to, I think, about $15 million. Energy conservation projects, we have expended about $507,000 in our current year MICLA funding to replace HVAC unit at El Pueblo. As it relates to the Energy Efficiency Technical Assistance Program, ETAP, audits have been completed for the Van Nuys Police Station, and currently we have started that project, and we anticipate that project should be completed by May 15th of this year. We've completed an audit at the 77th Street Police Station, and we're waiting for the review and approval by DWP. Audits have been completed by contractor pending GSD and DWP review. The Browdy Building, the LFD Air Support, the West Valley Police Station, also the Newton Police Station. We have two additional audits in process, the Central Police Station and also the City Hall. Any questions on that item? Okay, water conservation, GSD Building Maintenance Division has completed installation 24 of the 57 locations, and we anticipate that all 57 should be completed by the end of June 2015. Alternative fuel infrastructure, the North Hollywood Heavy Duty Vehicle Repair Facility alternative fuel retrofit is scheduled to be completed May 2015. As it relates to the electrical vehicle pilot project, this particular project has been in service since May of 2014 up to today, and we are averaging maintenance is about $160 per unit, so it's the maintenance seems very low on these particular vehicles. Right now what we're doing are gathering surveys and cost analysis. The surveys will be from individuals that had driven the vehicles and see exactly how they like them, is any things they like to see in the vehicles, any modifications, and then make the determination if these particular vehicles are beneficial to purchase for the city.
How does that number 160 compare to other vehicles?
It's probably right now it's pretty low. And the thing is, it's just a lot of our vehicles that are up in age or past the life cycle, but $160 so far is pretty low. At the same time, you have a number of things that are already in that particular vehicle that are under warranty also, so that's why your cost is low at this point. But we're looking hopefully to expand our pool and include more electric vehicles there, and also we're working with the mayor's office and different council offices to expand this program, especially when we prepare to purchase new vehicles, especially with our sedans. Because if you take our sedans, over 90% of our sedans are hybrid, so we're trying now to, when we replace those with the plug-ins.
and I believe my two colleagues were part of this experiment, right? Or have you guys been using your?
I still have an old hybrid. But,
Right. Do you have, if you want to test it or whatever, we're more than happy to make arrangements at your office.
You tested it?
Yeah, I tested it for about 2 or 3 weeks too.
I'm always willing to be a guinea pig.
That was the all electric. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm driving the electric plug-in.
Okay.
My commute doesn't. I have such a long commute. I would use up all the electric on the pure electric before I ever got to the district. But and then we're also going to talk about. So thank you for the top.
Okay.
We're going to talk about the Da Vinci issue as well.
Sure. Currently, all city departments impacted by the Da Vinci fire have been relocated to various short-term locations at City Hall, Garland, the Public Works Building, and 201 Figueroa Plaza. GSD is currently working to negotiate long-term temporary space for the impacted departments, which include aging, animal services, building and safety, and recreation and parks. The fire department and police departments that were located in 221 temporarily relocated their units in various public safety locations at this time.
So what's the timeline for departments and tenants to actually return?
To Figueroa Plaza?
Yeah.
Right now, we're working on the plan with the contract to determine exactly how long it will take us once we get that contract completed. If you would like, we can come back and give you more details what the timeline is, because that's being discussed and negotiated at this time. But hopefully in the next couple of months, we should have them into their long-term temporary, and hopefully in the next week or so, we have some finalization exactly how long it will take to restore 221 back to its condition where we can relocate the city employees back into that site.
Great. We certainly would want to update on that at the next meeting.
Every month, yeah, we'll update you on it.
The total estimated damages, do we have a total at this point?
I think probably best individual part will be the CAO risk management could tell you exactly what the total damages are at this time.
And as far as working with the insurance company, is that relationship?
The information they have, they're working well with us. We haven't encountered any issues with them so far.
Any additional questions, colleagues? Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right.
So, Mr. Villanueva, would you please read item number 2?
Certainly, sir. Item number 2 is an item continued from February 10, 2015. It's a Municipal Facilities Committee report relative to the real estate asset management study by PA Consulting. We do not have any cards on this item.
Okay. We have representatives from the CAO's office and PA Consulting coming forward. And please, the floor is yours. Please give us an overview.
Thank you. Committee members Blumenfield, O'Farrell, and Bonin, good afternoon. I'm Ramon Soto with the CAO's office. And joining me on my left is Mr. Scott Friedrichs from PA Consulting. As a matter of background, the 2011-12 budget contained funding for a study on the city's asset management function. The study scope was developed by our office with input from the Office of the Mayor, the Budget and Finance Committee, the then chair of the ITGS Committee, the CLA, and GSD. The RFP was released in July of 2012, and proposals were received by October 2012. PA Consulting was selected by the MFC on the recommendation of a selection panel of the CAO's office, GSD, DWP Real Estate, and MTA. The contract with PA Consulting was executed in May 2013. PA presented its study to the MFC in September of 2014. The study deliverables include a review of the asset management technology systems in the city, a review of the 2009 strategic real estate plan and a new proposed strategic real estate plan, a review of the city's real estate asset organization, and recommendations on portfolio optimization. The MFC directed its staff to review the study and make recommendations on implementation. The MFC staff presented its recommendations to the committee in November of 2014. I could go over the recommendations at the end of the presentation. At this point, I could discuss actual deliverables and some of the findings. First, on the asset management system, PA indicates that this is the most critical recommendation GSD Real Estate Services does not have an active asset management system, and as a result has to perform most real estate queries manually. The city must acquire an asset management system that supports portfolio monitoring, asset management performance measures, project tracking, and a host of other capabilities relating to the city's business, functional, and technical requirements. Also significant is that the city must perform data cleansing as a part of the asset management system acquisition. With appropriate resources, the data cleaning activities could be performed ahead of or run concurrently with the acquisition of an asset management system. PA evaluated a number of off-the-shelf asset management systems that it believes may solve the city's needs and shortlisted 5 firms. In addition, PA evaluated several systems used by the city's proprietary departments and advises that we may want to look at AssetWorks, which is a system used by the Harbor Department. And however, it's probably or maybe appropriate for the city to acquire a new system through the RFP process. And then in addition to the asset management system and relating to it, GSD will need appropriate personnel resources to administer an asset management system and to provide the data cleanup. GSD has submitted a request for resources in its 2015-16 budget request, which is currently being considered by the mayor. The request is in the range of about $1.6 million, includes 6 positions, plus as-needed funding and hiring hall funding for the data cleanup element. And 2 of the positions being requested would be ongoing. The next element is the strategic plan, strategic growth plan. PA notes that the city has made considerable progress in adhering to the 2009 strategic plan principles, but notes that the city falls short in several, including not yet acquiring a new asset management system, which was recommended way back then, and not yet adopting a nonprofit lease policy and having large numbers of expired leases. The study notes additional significant city advances, including reduction of lease expenditures, consolidation of staff at Figueroa Plaza, completing the public works building consolidation, constructing greener buildings, and disposing surplus properties. However, PA notes that there is insufficient space in the Civic Center to bring all city operations that should be centralized into city-owned space. Significant PA recommendations here include that the city build a new building at the Parker Center site, adoption of the nonprofit lease policy, consider adjusting space standards, promoting the use of hoteling for city operations that could benefit from that space model, and completing certain recommended projects on deployment management, technology management, data management, and asset portfolio management. The next area that they looked at was on organizational design. PA reviewed the city's asset management organization and made the following significant recommendations. The first is that the city outsource its lease function to a third-party broker in which GSD would merge its leasing and tenant services units, and to transfer space planning and optimization functions from GSD to BOE, and create 1 position in GSD for administration and accounting, create an additional IT position in GSD, recognizing that ultimate staffing needs may depend on the type of asset management system that is going to be acquired, adding an attorney position at the Office of the City Attorney real estate section in order to reduce the bottlenecks that occur there, and to add 3 positions in the CAO's Asset Management Strategic Planning Unit to handle large ad hoc projects. I will say at this point, the MFC recommendation is to defer all proposed organization changes until after a new asset management system is acquired because of the scope of work that's required in acquiring a new system. So the MFC feels that we should just hold off on these staffing recommendations with the exception of the city attorney position. And the final area that PA looked at, along with its subcontractor Cushman and Wakefield, was portfolio optimization. And they looked at developing a framework that could be used by the city to run its portfolio internally, which includes best practices, definition of property categories, and identification of critical data fields for the pertinent asset management system. Also completing a value optimization study of the city's highest potential properties and select leases where the city is the lessee. And PA and Cushman also developed multiple pro forma templates that could be used by the city internally to support future portfolio optimization analyses and review the city's brokerage practices. Significant recommendations on that front made by PA is that they established recommended classifications into essential and various non-essential categories, including subcategories for non-essential properties to assist the city to develop use and disposal options. They looked at providing development options on city properties, including City Hall South, the West LA Civic Center, the El Pueblo Pico House, and Parking Lot 2 at El Pueblo, Lincoln Heights Jail, and a Humboldt property, which is adjacent to Lincoln Heights Jail, the Westlake Theater, and the Reseda Town Center. And they developed pro forma templates to be developed, or rather, they developed pro forma templates to be used by city staff to adequately perform future property analyses. And some of the recommendations from the MFC that are now before you is to note and file the study by PA Consulting, to adopt and concept PA's recommendations on a proposed 2014 strategic real estate plan with implementation of key recommendations to be considered separately by the MFC in consultation with affected departments at a later date and forwarded to Mayor and Council for approval as necessary. And to adopt and concept PA's recommendations on portfolio optimization and implement recommendations with EWDD as priorities are identified. Direct GSD to identify resources needed to begin cleanup of its existing real estate data during 2014-15. Direct GSD to submit a budget package in its 2015-16 budget request to implement a new asset management system. As I've noted earlier, they did that in fact. Authorize GSD with the assistance of ITA, CAO, and any other affected city departments to develop and release an RFP for the acquisition of a new asset management system. Direct GSD to submit a real estate improvement plan to the MFC for service delivery improvements as an alternative to organization recommendations made by PA. This is because we would be deferring the organization recommendations like to outsource. So the MFC asked that GSD develop a real estate improvement plan in the interim. To request the city attorney to submit a budget request for one additional real estate attorney in 2015-16. My understanding is that they've done that.
In the RFP, in the alphabet soup of agencies that are engaged, I didn't hear ITA.
Yes, the recommendation is to authorize GSD with the assistance of ITA, CAO, and if I've messed them up, I apologize.
You were too fast for me, okay.
So was my mind. Let me back to the city attorney recommendation to submit a budget request for one additional real estate attorney in the 2015-16 budget request. The city attorney, in fact, has submitted a budget request for that position. It's under consideration by the mayor's office. And the last recommendation is to direct EWDD to submit a budget package in its 2015-16 budget request for any resources needed to implement study recommendations. I would note on that the PA report did not specifically touch on EWDD and making any specific recommendations on EWDD. I understand that EWDD did submit a budget request for positions relating to asset management, but that request does not specifically cite the PA study as a basis. And that concludes my remarks at this point. I'm sorry that they were so long, and we're available here to answer any questions.
Start with a couple of quick ones. So the lead agency, after all that, for the asset management system would be which one? We anticipate that it would be housed in GSD, so GSD would be making the request to release the RFP and for presumably staffing for it. A final determination on how to approach that has not been made at this time because everything is very preliminary. ITA was on board during the study and were consulted on how to approach. We have choices on whether to host a new system in-house or to use a vendor's hosting capabilities, but a decision would have to be made on that. In any case, GSD and ITA would be key players in getting a new system. And GSD would be the lead?
We expect GSD to be the lead.
Okay. It's always good to know. I mean, so many different responsibilities. You got to have the buck stop somewhere, and then someone bring everybody in. In terms of the resources needed beyond licensing for the asset management system, are we talking? How much more than $2 million are we talking about, and what are we talking about?
Well, to date, what GSD has submitted on their budget request, it totals about $1.6 million. What that does is that it provides them staffing to prepare for the RFP process, and it provides also staffing to perform the data cleansing. Only 2 positions would be ongoing based on their budget request. Now, in terms of acquiring a new system, PA found that we would likely spend somewhere between $1.5 million and around $2.1 million or so for a new system. And so we expect that of that, well, actually, I'm not sure as I sit here how much of that would be ongoing and how much of that would be one time. There would be some ongoing licensing costs that would be associated with that. However, just as background to this whole thing, we won't know what the true costs we are facing until we perform that RFP process or that acquisition process, because at that time we'll have a clear sense of what it is that we're going to acquire and what kind of resources we may need internally if they're not being provided by the vendor.
I mean, and theoretically, this will save us money somehow. I mean, there's going to be ongoing costs, but getting a better handle on all this should cost savings to the city at some point.
Correct. I mean, the big shortfall simply in asset management is that GSD and the city do not have a working system, and so you know, if you were asked to ask a question, you know, how many surplus properties do you have, either as a whole in the city or by council district or some other measure, the query would have to be done manually, and you may not hear an answer for some time. So we're just trying to get to the point where we can get good automated information, and that may require the investment by the city, and hopefully the payoff there would be in the efficiency that you gain by having the new system.
Just for me, the majority of the costs associated with an AMS will generally be upfront. The whole point of implementing an AMS system is that you make it easy to manage the data and the information. So it's actually not a vast amount of work once it's in, once people are trained. I've seen organizations where they do it as part of their daily job. They might have somebody, maybe 1 or 2 people overseeing the whole thing, managing the quality of the data, but it's actually relatively insignificant versus the cost of buying it, licensing it, and putting it in. In terms of the cost savings, you don't have data, you don't have the right data to make effective decisions at the moment. That's really what the system gives you, and it enables you to make the right decision with the right property, which will bring savings and efficiency, but also long-term solutions for long-term issues.
Well, I'd love to figure out a way to track that as well, so that when we make these kinds of investments, we can see how they've paid off and in what way, not just in terms of efficiencies within the department, which there will be multiple, and then department resources and folks can be doing a multitude of tasks, and as well as the efficiencies we're going to gain by putting those properties to more productive use potentially. Certainly with CRA properties and things like that, those are easy to see, but all of our assets could be more productive potentially.
Certainly.
The hoteling concept is very interesting to me, and that's sort of a very modern thing. I mean, private sector is doing that all of the time, shared space and time shifting. And are we thinking about hoteling in city buildings and non-city buildings, or just city buildings?
The city itself and its discussions on the use of hoteling applies to the space that the city utilizes and occupies, and so we think that there is definitely something to be looked at there. There are a number of types of occupations that certain city employees occupy, which may not need to have like a full-time desk assigned. You think of like fire inspectors, you think of building and safety inspectors, et cetera, and that's one of the areas that we would like to look at is, in fact, to expand that capability. Right now in City Hall, we do provide like hoteling space for BOE employees who are here, providing different types of services, and in council and council committees. Perhaps that could be expanded, to provide, some kind of hotel space for, city departments to use generally, somewhere here on the 10th floor or elsewhere within City Hall.
As we get more virtual offices and sort of modular spaces that you can be a city employee and be able to sort of plug in your office to any of 15 or 50 different modular spaces, depending on where you're doing or what you're doing at the time, could be a great efficiency for the city.
Sure.
One more question, I'll turn to my colleagues. The nonprofit leasing policy, it's a perennial discussion. Can you talk about the current status of this policy? What are our current practices and procedures like? And
Yes, I don't want to put Madonna on the spot, but I think that she may have a better sense of where we are at that. And I also have, I think, Jackie Wagner of our office also works on that, and she's available too. So either of them are now on the spot.
Jackie Wagner, CAO's office. We've actually formed our working group, and we are meeting on revising the policy, and we should be reporting back to this committee within the next couple of months, before the end of the fiscal year.
Mr. Chair, just a comment and a question. So we're running just head on into that lack of an AMS by some of the committee work that we're doing on entertainment industry, because we've called for a universal list of all city properties so that we can have that inventory that may be helpful to the film industry. And that list is taking a long time to cobble together because we're having to do it the way it was done circa 1960, right? So,
correct.
So that's one glaring example of how an AMS system could help in something that we're directly involved in. My question is in relation to the Asset Works being one of the 5 recommended, shortlisted contractors. It's commented in the report that they are best aligned with the city's needs. They're currently used by the harbor. Why is I'm not calling them out. I'm just curious to see why you feel they're best aligned and what we can glean from that.
In its review of existing systems used by the city, PA found that it was best aligned. That doesn't mean it's well aligned, but it was of those systems that are out there, it's the best aligned. However, our belief is that it falls short in the sense that Asset Works is a much narrower application as used by the harbor. The harbor uses it almost exclusively on leases, but our needs are so much greater. For example, a big deal with GSD as they see it is our ability to be able to plan maintenance and monitor energy usage. We're looking for, in our asset management system, to have modules that capture that kind of information. In the case of Asset Works, it's not a concern for the harbor. It doesn't go there. Now, is it possible that they may offer that in terms of some kind of module? It might. And so we will have discussions with them and follow up on that particular lead to see just how beneficial it could be for the city. It's always much easier to piggyback on an existing application that's used by a city department. However, we also want one that's going to be able to thoroughly handle our needs as well. So that may not be just Asset Works, but it may be a broader field that we need to look at.
And the working group is able to inform the wide array of needs that we could put into an RFP, for example. Right?
Yes, and I'll say that PA did a really good job for us in developing some fairly detailed technical requirements, functional requirements, and business requirements that we would need in a new system. It's not a panacea in and of itself, those factors. However, they go a long way to helping us define what it is exactly that we need to acquire. So we're not starting from a blank slate.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I have a number of different surplus properties in my district that are just sort of vacant and stale, certainly not the highest and best use. You listed the West LA Civic Center as an economic development opportunity. I definitely have a vision for what that should be, and I've been working with the community for what that should be. How does this process impact the work and the thinking that's already gone into that?
Well, first of all, they did work on a specific property in your area as in the study, which was the West LA Civic Center, and they PA with Cushman and Wakefield developed pro forma templates that we could use in analyzing properties. And at that point, I see that Mr. Josh Romer of our office is here, who is with our Asset Management Strategic Planning Unit, has been working on these such issues that you're pointing out, and I'll turn the mic over to him.
Thank you, Josh Romer, CAO's office. So as Ramon mentioned, I worked with Cushman and Wakefield on their portion of this PA study. And in fact, we did look at Reseda Town Center and West LA Civic Center as two of the, what we assumed were some of the city's most optimal potential reuse properties. And what Cushman and Wakefield and PA helped us do is basically refine the city's proposed asset management strategic plan framework. This committee considered and approved it in December. Just the previous to this committee, it was approved by Economic Development Committee. So I imagine it will be going to council within the next week or two. So PA's work kind of helped us craft the city's proposed approach for how we evaluate our high-value properties. Beyond that, we had Cushman and Wakefield and PA basically do kind of site-specific analyses of 10 of the most high-value properties. So that entailed a market analysis to give us a sense of what the uses are that would most likely work on these 10 properties. And in the case of West LA Civic Center, which is pretty complex because you have a number of city uses that we would want to have to continue on the site, help give us some proposed deal structures that might allow us to accommodate private development, as well as all the public uses that are already there on site. So I'm happy to share that analysis with your staff, if I haven't already.
Okay, great. A nice new civic center, public space with lots of low-income housing and affordable housing with some economic development that would be good. Then there's a bunch of other surplus properties in the district. In my district, affordable housing isn't going to get built unless the city puts some skin in the game with some of our surplus property. So there's a few of them I'm looking at and thinking, is this an opportunity for the city to give a 99-year lease to an affordable housing developer or something like that? So we've got some skin in the game, they can pencil a project out. Some of them might make sense for smaller economic development opportunities. How does what you're doing now impact that process? How does it help me, or how does it slow me down, or what's the impact?
Help is the goal. So the asset management strategic plan framework that I just mentioned that should be coming to council in the next week or two was developed in conjunction with this study, and it is arranged to work with council offices to determine their high priorities in terms of properties in the area, and gather the appropriate city stakeholders to make a decision early on in the game about what's the best approach for a property. According to what an approach is for what we think the desired end use is, it assigns it to another department for implementation. For a property that is evaluated by this team and determined that a housing use makes the most sense, then HCID is assigned as the designated implementer. So the framework is meant to resolve the fact that we have kind of an ad hoc approach to city property and an unclear process. And so sometimes we just churn. We think about an idea for a property, we kind of make some progress, it gets stopped because somebody else has some ideas about it. The idea is to have all the city stakeholders very early on in the process basically make a determination, make that recommendations to city council, and then council can designate what the appropriate use for a property is, and then have us move forward from that. So.
Okay, good. You helped me figure out what the problem was we were trying to solve and made sure it was the same problem I was trying to solve, so that's good. Thank you.
Great. Well, appreciate the good report on this and the dialogue. What I'd like to do is to suggest that we approve the recommendations in the MFC report, give the following 3 additional instructions. 1, instruct the CAO and GSD to look for savings in the current fiscal year 14-15 for a new asset management system. If this is a great system that we want to do moving forward, why not start now? and see what kind of savings are out there. There's, if it's good then, it's good now. Every moment we can move forward, we can save money and get on the right system, right road. Second, instruct the CAO and other departments as necessary to report on the hoteling options for departments to optimize the use of office space. And third, instruct the CAO with the assistance of GSD and CLA to report on the status of the nonprofit leasing policy. And I know you already mentioned that that's well underway, so that just helps emphasize that. So with those three additions and approving the recommendations without objection, it is so ordered. And Mr. Villanueva, are there any other items before us?
Mr. Chair, if I may, just read into the record item number 9 that was approved earlier. I failed to read that into the record.
Yes, please.
Yes. It's a motion by Council Members Buscaino and Bonin relative to a lease agreement with the state through the Office of Assembly Member O'Donnell for the vacant office space at the San Pedro Municipal Building located at 638 South Beacon Street, Suite 551, Los Angeles 90731. Other than that, we don't have any.
Okay. Did we not put that one on consent? Well,
yeah, it was put on consent.
It was. Okay. So we're all good on that?
Yes.
So then, no other items before us. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.